No, this is the cockpit. The bowling lanes are in the back.
You're a member of this crew. Can you face some unpleasant facts?
My doctor advised against it.
I think you ought to know what our chances are. The life of everyone on board depends upon just one thing.
Reviewing these comedy spoofs, I know. But surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Well, I'm a little rusty, but I'll see what I can do.
You're the only chance we've got.
Then I better get to it. This is Movie Night! Hello and welcome inside the TCL Chinese Theater for the 6th season of Movie Night. Bringing you high-quality, in-depth reviews in 4 minutes or less, I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. And how about that all-new intro, huh? We've certainly come a long way since my first review show premiered over 10 years ago. Anyway, for part 1 of tonight's big premiere, we'll be reviewing half of my 10 favorite comedy parodies. As always, we begin in chronological order with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This cult classic parody film from the legendary English comedy troupe Monty Python was a box office success, earning more than 12 times its small $400,000 budget. And with those sales, it became the most successful British film released in America following its April 1975 premiere. The 91-minute narrative is generally a parody of King Arthur's quest to find the Holy Grail during the Middle Ages, but the story bounces around quite a bit and often contains more than its fair share of anachronistic jokes. Truthfully, the PG-13 rated story amounts to little more than a series of loosely connected sketches set in and around some English castles. Weird animated intertitles, a trademark of Monty Python's sketch comedy TV show, are sprinkled throughout the plot to fill in gaps left by this disjointed story. Fortunately, the group of actors, each of whom play about 8 separate characters, do an outstanding job with the material. Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Eric Idle, Terry Gilliam, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin are experts at their craft, and their impeccable timing, sharp writing, and brilliant delivery is what really makes this film.
Brave, brave Concord! You shall not have died in vain!
I'm not quite dead, sir.
Well, you shall not have been mortally wounded in vain!
I think I could pull through, sir.
Oh, I see.
Actually, I think I'm all right to come with you, sir.
No, sweet Concord, stay here. I will send help as soon as I've accomplished a daring and heroic rescue in my own particular...
Idiom, sir?
idiom.
No, I feel fine, actually.
Farewell, sweet Concord.
I'll just stay here then, shall I, sir?
The majority of the laughs are derived from the extremely memorable and quotable dialogue, rather than sight gags or pratfalls. Indeed, the film literally opens with a subtitle joke regarding a Norwegian moose of some sort. Bookended by slow dips to black, each scene plays out like a self-contained sketch, many of which have become rather famous since. There's the hilarious question and answer session regarding the methods of proper witch hunting, a rescue effort that sees Cleese murdering everyone in sight with reckless abandon, a debate on the airspeed of unladen African swallows, and of course, the knights who say knee. The only such sequence that isn't quite on par with the brilliance of the others is a drawn-out bit involving horny maidens locked away in a castle, that even breaks the fourth wall to ask audiences if this scene should have been cut. And honestly, they probably should have. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't mention my favorite scene, when Cleese dons a suit of armor as the Black Knight, who persists on sword fighting even after losing 3 of his limbs, playfully defending, "Just a flesh wound?" Unable to afford real horses because of their shoestring budget, a recurring gag involving coconuts is used instead with fabulous results. The lack of money wasn't always advantageous though, as there are notable deficiencies with the lighting, making it hard to see the actors' faces at times. An oft-repeated chunk of trumpet-laden music by Neil Innes does give the film a more regal quality, however. Although the movie's pace is very inconsistent, some scenes linger far longer than they should, the laughs are plentiful and the experience is a delightful one. Fans of tongue-in-cheek British humor will absolutely adore this film, but I suspect most of them have already seen this classic. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a rewatchable collection of hilarious moments from comedy legends. Now let's see what you had to say about the movie in the YouTube comments. With some of you calling this the funniest British film ever made, your scores average to a 9 out of 10. I simply love this picture, but there's also little semblance of a story, especially with its rushed ending, so I can't quite award it my top score. I thought it was awesome too. Next up tonight, Airplane. Released on July 2nd, 1980, this satirical disaster comedy film was written and directed by David Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry Zucker, a trio collectively known as Zaz. Primarily parodying big-budget disaster ensembles like Zero Hour and Airport, this $3.5 million production was a huge success, earning $80 million in profit. When the crew of an airplane is taken ill, the only person capable of saving them is an ex-pilot traumatized by his service in the war. But he overcomes his drinking problem and personal demons to assist the flight. Playing everything entirely straight, the mammoth group of dramatic actors take their first swing at comedy and absolutely nail it. The relatively unknown Robert Hayes and Julie Haggerty, meanwhile, star as the romantic leads, and it's their perplexing chemistry that manages to give the film a bit of its emotional resonance, despite its overtly wacky delivery. The breakout performance, however, is no doubt from longtime respected dramatic actor Leslie Nielsen, whose brilliant turn as the film's deadpan doctor marked a huge turning point in his storied career. Remarking on his surprising talent for comedy, famed critic Roger Ebert remarked that he was the Laurence Olivier of spoofs. When he stoically lays out the exposition to Hayes, the washed-up war vet can only muster a confused response. "Surely you can't be serious." Nielsen's straight-faced reply, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley," is one of the film's many excellent uses of verbal puns and perhaps Airplane's most iconic moment. Similarly, Robert Stack of Unsolved Mysteries fame, Lloyd Bridges, and Peter Graves contribute excellent performances as well, who somehow managed to keep from cracking in even the film's funniest scenes.
Captain, how soon can you land?
I can't tell.
You can tell me I'm a doctor.
No, I mean, I'm just not sure.
Or can't you take a guess?
Well, not for another 2 hours.
You can't take a guess for another 2 hours?
No, I mean, we can't land for another 2 hours. Fog has closed down everything this side of the mountains. We've got to get through to Chicago.
The mile-a-minute, 87-minute narrative is busting at the seams with sight gags, verbal puns, pratfalls, and absurd cutaways, including a hilariously contentious back and forth with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, an over-the-top flashback setup of Saturday Night Fever that includes a violent mid-song murder, a confusing conversation involving the crew's surnames and flight lingo, and a particularly clever Felicio joke with the plane's autopilot. Supported by wonderful cartoon-style sound effects, the music from Elmer Bernstein further helps to picture Masquerade as a serious action film, making the juxtaposition of bouncing boob shots and hysterical passengers that much funnier. For a collaborative effort, Zaz still manages to maintain a consistent visual style for the PG-rated film, keeping most shots locked down and wide, punching in for close-ups only when absolutely necessary. Inspiring countless comedies in its wake, including a decently entertaining sequel of its own, Airplane is an immensely funny and rewatchable comedy, and if I absolutely had to pick one, is probably my all-time favorite. Now let's see what you had to say about this film in the YouTube comments. Both of us gave plenty of praise to the non-stop gags and Nielsen's excellent character. You thought this movie was awesome. An obvious classic, I happen to consider this one especially great. I thought it was amazing. Plenty of options to choose from, including tonight's 5 movies. So for our poll question, what is your favorite spoof comedy? Leave your response below with the hashtag poll question to be eligible for a 1-year pro-level account on Letterboxd.com. I'll be announcing a winner in part 2 of this episode next week. Our third review tonight is for This Is Spinal Tap. This improvised mockumentary from director Rob Reiner was released nationwide in March of 1984, where it doubled its $2.5 million budget. The quick 82-minute experience is an excellent send-up of rock culture, portraying the fictional British heavy metal band Spinal Tap during a year on tour, with hilarious results. The R-rated picture perfectly satirizes everything from their wild debauchery, musical pretentiousness, performance blunders, and general cluelessness. Perpetually teetering on the edge of realism, it's the extremely subtle and true-to-life humor that not only makes this movie so funny, it also tricked a fair number of audiences into believing this band actually existed. In their first of many such parody documentaries, veteran comics Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer lead the picture as the titular group of codpiece-wearing narcissists, ad-libbing majority of their lines in the process. In an inspired bit of casting, Reiner appears as an ambitious film director within the film, often interviewing the band on camera. Later, he sets up the picture's most iconic moment when he questioned Guest's decision to label all of his amps with an 11, asking, "Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little bit louder?" The drawn-out beat before Chris answers, "These go to 11," is one of the most legendary examples of comedic timing in film history. Joined by some cameos from before they were famous actors like Bruno Kirby, Billy Crystal, Fran Drescher, and Ed Begley Jr., the core group of players make their biting improvisation and witty banter look effortless. But their heavy accents and talking over one another sometimes makes it hard to follow their conversations. This is one picture that definitely benefits from having the subtitles turned on.
I do not for one think that the problem was that the band was down. I think that the problem may have been that there was a Stonehenge monument on the stage that was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. All right? That tended to understate the hugeness of the object.
I really think you're just making a much too big a thing out of it.
Making a big thing out of it would have been a good idea.
Structurally, the movie could really be arranged in any order. Each scene works well by itself, but when assembled together, there's very little cohesion or overarching story here. The fly-on-the-wall visual style, however, lends credence to the picture's unscripted nature, consistently cutting away to Spinal Tap's many shortcomings and humorous issues during their onstage performances. Like when Shearer gets stuck in a cocoon-like apparatus, forcing him to wail out his bass solo in the cramped compartment. Indeed, the movie is littered with dozens of little gags like this, including the group's unexplained herpes, difficulties with their overly simplistic album cover, and overtly misogynistic song lyrics. When Guest waxes poetic on a romantic ballad he's been arranging, influenced by Mozart and Bach, he then shares that the song's title is Lick My Love Pump. Despite the absurd and lewd material, their music is actually rather catchy and should appeal to most rock fans. Speaking of which, U2 guitarist The Edge famously said of the film, "I didn't laugh, I wept. It was so close to the truth." And that is perhaps my biggest issue with the movie. There's plenty of great concepts and jokes, but much like a great Onion article, it often induces more of a soft chuckle rather than true laughter. Still though, as the only movie on IMDb to be rated out of 11, This Is Spinal Tap is wonderful satire of rock culture worth watching more than once. Now let's check out some of your reviews. Opinions were a bit mixed on this one, but you enjoyed the sharp writing and silly music, scoring this an 8 out of 11. Not quite as strong as it could be, I'll score this a cool. Next up, Spaceballs. This sci-fi parody film, written, produced, directed, and starring Mel Brooks, was released in June of 1987, where it almost doubled its $22 million budget. Primarily functioning as a spoof of Star Wars, this goofy and joke-filled 96-minute movie also riffs on Star Trek, Alien, Planet of the Apes, and other Hollywood classics. Functioning as a sort of Indiana Jones meets Han Solo analog, Bill Pullman is featured in the lead role, who attempts to rescue Daphne Zuniga, a beautiful princess from the supposedly evil Rick Moranis. Pullman's trusty sidekick is a half-man, half-dog, played charmingly by the late John Candy, while Zuniga's sidekick is a female C-3PO-like droid, voiced by the late Joan Rivers. This core group of 5 players, plus Dick Van Patten, George Weiner, and Brooks himself, handle the quick and sarcastic dialogue perfectly, with top marks going to Moranis as the nerdy Darth Vader-type villain. His initial entrance, revealing a helmet 6 times larger than his head, is a tremendous sight gag, and one that had me literally hitting pause the first time I saw this movie because I was laughing so hard.
I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, leave me alone! Yet, I find you strangely attractive.
Of course you do. Druish princesses are often attracted to money and power, and I have both, and you know it.
Oh, leave me alone!
No, kiss me!
No, no, yes, no,
no,
yes, no, yes, oh, your helmet is so big.
Lord Helmet, what? You need it on the bridge, sir. Knock on my door! Knock next time!
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything?
No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
Good!
When attempting to catch up to the escaped heroes, Moranis orders his comically large spaceship to immediately jump to ludicrous speed, to which Candy surprisingly exclaims, "They've gone to plaid." A quote I love so much I had it printed on a t-shirt you can buy now at Jogwheel's all-new merchandise store, thatreference.com. Speaking of shameless plugs, a running gag involving Spaceballs merchandise, including toilet paper, action figures, and even flamethrowers, is particularly amusing. And even though Brooks breaks the fourth wall to hawk some of these products, they sadly never existed in real life, as this was the singular condition George Lucas requested when allowing the funny man to spoof his work. No doubt though, the standout sequence occurs when the bad guys resort to watching a VHS cassette of the film itself to gain information. Seeing them interact with the video loop in real time is a wonderfully hilarious moment, and one my friend Riley and I even poorly recreated in one of my earliest YouTube uploads. Despite containing a number of swears, including the F-word, this movie is somehow still rated PG, and I have fond memories of this when I was younger, but upon rewatching it recently, it honestly didn't hold up that well. The adequately paced story is supported by a disco theme by longtime Brooks collaborator John Morris that overtly incorporates space sound effects. It works well enough, but more than anything else, it dates the movie as a 1980s production. The visual effects, meanwhile, are competently handled by Apogee Incorporated, who utilize some great model and compositing work to bring the space adventure to life. Like most of Mel's work, this is a goofy and harmless movie that should easily entertain younger audiences, and fans of Star Wars. Spaceballs is a quirky send-up of space fantasies with plenty of inspired gags. And here's what you had to say about it in the YouTube comments. a double 8 for Spaceballs. Obvious praise goes to Mel Brooks and the endlessly quotable dialogue, with both of us scoring this a great. Even though I took most of the summer off from my film reviewing duties, I was still hard at work on the Movie Night Archive channel, uploading various commentaries on Hollywood's newest trailers, including my most recent thoughts on the Avengers Age of Ultron teaser. So please subscribe to that channel for more exclusive content and a full library of every movie we've discussed so far. Finally tonight, here's my review of Naked Gun: Files from the Police Squad. Another satire written by the Zaz trio, Jerry Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and David Zucker, this PG-13 rated film earned over $65 million in profit following its December 2nd release in 1988. Based off the short-lived television series Police Squad, the plot follows a bumbling and generally incompetent LAPD cop as he attempts to foil a plot to assassinate the visiting Queen Elizabeth II. Leslie Nielsen stars in the lead role as perhaps his most famous character, and is a true master of slapstick, including my favorite sequence when he masquerades as an ostentatious baseball umpire for an unsuspecting ball game. Priscilla Presley, Ricardo Montalban, George Kennedy, and O.J. Simpson round out the supporting cast with equally capable performances, delivering all the brilliant wordplay and gags with ease. Having missed the chance to spoof himself in Airplane years earlier, Kennedy reportedly campaigned himself to be in this film, and is a great fit for the deadpan police captain. The quick 85-minute plot delivers these excellent verbal puns and malapropisms with such high frequency. Multiple viewings is almost mandatory if you want to catch them all.
You can tell a lot from fiber samples if they aren't too wet. And I was hoping in this case we wouldn't come up dry.
Hey, look out!
Anybody catch the license plate? Anybody get a look at the driver? Take the names of everybody here for questioning. I gotta get inside.
Eager to take their relationship a step further, Presley invitingly asks Nielsen if he'll be interested in a nightcap, to which he quickly replies, "No thank you, I don't wear them." On paper, this line isn't necessarily anything special, but Nielsen's perfect timing and delivery is what makes every aspect of his performance so excellent, and still funny 25 plus years later. The wider 16:9 frame allows for plenty of room for the picture's awesome sight gags, like when one fleeing criminal repeatedly careens into larger and larger explosive ordinances, culminating with Leslie ironically advising nearby crowds that there's nothing to see here. The seldom used score from Ira Newborn is an upbeat and festive one that lends itself very well to the goofy action on screen. This David Zucker comedy not only would completely revitalize Nielsen's career, it also spawned 2 sequels, which although unable to match the humor of the original, were just as successful and rather entertaining. If you enjoy goofy and immature laughs, this is one experience that won't disappoint. The sillier gags will entertain younger audiences, while some of the more adult gags will have older viewers entertained as well. The Naked Gun: Files from the Police Squad is an excellent police detective spoof with non-stop jokes. And here are your thoughts on the movie. Our ratings for Naked Gun, a 9 and an 8. Many of you enjoyed the silly style and of course Nielsen's performance, rating this an awesome. Although it's easily the strongest in the trilogy, it's still a bit juvenile to receive anything higher than a great from me. And now I look at what you're saying about movies currently playing in theaters with some tweet critiques. If you see a new movie in theaters, tweet your review with the JPMN hashtag. Next weekend we'll continue reviewing my favorite comedy spoofs. But before then, in a special bonus episode, I'll be reviewing 3 horror classics: The Exorcist, Poltergeist, and Child's Play. If you've seen these films, share your opinions by voting in the polls below or by leaving a comment review. But that does it for tonight's episode. If you'd like to watch more movie night reviews, check out the related videos on the right or click subscribe to be notified of all new content. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Letterboxd for updates between episodes. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, have a good movie night.